series, our 12 Weeks of Christmas podcast here at Team Video Official. Today's a very special day. Thank you to each and every single one of you who has been tuning in, sharing our previous podcast, and really taking in the value. I'm sitting right in front of one of our ride or dies, somebody who has started our Team Beauty journey with me from the very beginning. Welcome, Bree. How do you feel today?
I am so excited. When we first came out that we were going to have a podcast, I was like, I can't wait to be on it. So I'm really excited to be here today and be able to share my story. I think it's been a while.
Yes, and today's topic is very interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
you and I obviously go way back. It's been almost 8 years, but at the same time, there's a little age difference. And but now we're moms together, right?
Yes.
And we've been really been able to live a journey, through the last 8 years, being able to empower women, inspire them, and live different phases of our life. Now, for everybody listening, to me, and us in Team Beauty, one of our main topics, right? And one of the main things that we focus on is empowerment. And
Yes.
so, Bree, before we get into that, right? Like, tell us a little bit about you. How did you say yes? Where do you come from? And
Yes.
then we'll dive right in.
All right, super great. So before I started, I guess starting from the beginning, my mom right out of high school got pregnant with me. So my mom was a young mom, and I was about like an only child for 9 years, and it was great because it was me and my mom. And eventually, she did remarry, and she got pregnant. She had my two sisters, and I immediately from that moment felt like I was going to be the example for them. And you kind of, well, you're also the oldest, Cherry.
Yes.
We kind of get put that, you're the role model and they watch what you do. So
We feel this like higher responsibility, right?
yes,
Like
definitely.
who that's listening is a firstborn child, please.
Definitely. If you are a firstborn child, you need to tag us and let us know. But with that being said, I definitely, felt that responsibility. It wasn't long after with my sister's father that it was an abusive relationship that my mom went through that I got to see. I was 9 years older than my sisters. So I understood definitely a lot more. And when that happened, I don't talk about this a lot, like on a daily, but because we're on a podcast, I wanted to share a little
Give
bit
us the
more.
juice, girl. Let's get real with each other.
Let's get real.
That's the topic of today. So
Yeah. And so with that being said, when that happened with my mom, it was a very bad situation. And we actually were in a women's shelter. Me, my mom, and my sisters, and it was a very hard time. And at that time, I was 12 years old, about to be 13, going through all my hormones and emotion. And I remember at that time feeling like, why me? I had to move schools. I'm in this place. It's very uncomfortable. But it wasn't until that moment that I saw other women in worse situations than we were
in the shelter.
And I didn't think that that was possible in my mind until I
that
saw
other
that
people could go through
worse than what my mom had gone through and what we were going through as a family. And it was at that time which they did have counseling, for the kids. And in my age group category, because I was like a teenager, I guess they really wanted us to, be on a good path. That I got told by one of the counselors, kids like you don't really amount to anything. And I was like offended. I was a teen and I was emotional.
Wow.
And because of the circumstances that or the trauma that you go through, that's like the percentage or the rate that you guys don't really make it. And I felt emotional about it. I was like, he doesn't know me. How dare he? But more than, oh, I'm going to prove, that man wrong. It was more about myself and having that older sister and being like, no, right? I'm going to do things by the book. And sure enough, I was in high school and I graduated with honors and top of my class. But when I got out of high school and I went into college, I always say this. I'm like, I'm a millennial. I grew up watching MTV Cribs. And when I would watch MTV Cribs, I'm like, yes, that house. I want a 6 garage with all these cars. I want to pull inside my house and outside. Those were like the things that I'm like, those are goals.
Mhm.
But when I got to college, the reality set in of I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was like, oh, I suck at math. I failed college algebra like 3 times. I
Oh
had
my
to take,
gosh.
like, it was horrible. And I was like, okay, well, I can't be like an engineer.
Mhm.
My mom's like, she's in the medicine field. And she's like, what about a doctor? I'm like, Mom, no, I hate blood. So I started feeling like there wasn't really anything out there for me. And so I thought in my brain that the best thing to do would be teaching.
Okay.
Because I was like, well, teachers have summers off and they have Christmas off. And I'm like, I wanted to quote unquote work the least. So I went into special.
Worked the least, but you wanted them to be cribs,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. What I didn't know as I started my classes and, we started going into the schools, and as I would listen to the teachers and the conversations, they would always say like, I don't get paid enough for this. And I would be like, what do you mean? Right. And so when I really started looking into how much they do make, that's what my first reaction was. I won't be able to live in the TV cribs. And I was like, oh, I have morals. I will never have a sugar daddy. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And at the time, at 18, my very first job was at Chuck E. Cheese. It was such a humbling job.
What did you do there?
I did everything from the cashier, and I was even the little mouse mascot. I did so much there. And I realized that the pay, obviously, after a few months, was definitely not worth it. But I never felt that any of the pay between the time I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, I had 8 different jobs by the time that I was 20.
Wow.
So I
So you
did
started working at what age?
18.
So in 2 years,
Yeah,
you had 8 jobs.
8 different jobs. Yeah. So I quit there. I went into retail at Kohl's. I did multiple serving jobs. And I started like at a seafood place, and I hated seafood, but I got hired on the spot, which taught me a lot. Then I worked at a hotel. I did everything that would pay me a little bit more,
Mm.
minus the fact that my managers were like, you're such a hard worker. Let me give you a little bit more work. And I'd be like, well, am I going to get paid more? And they're like, why would we pay you more? You're so new. And I'd be like, because you're giving me more work.
Mm.
And that's when I realized, like, man, it was really heartbreaking because I had a very big vision out of high school, which I think most kids do.
Mhm.
And the reality sets in, and it's not that glamorous. So
Mhm.
I was kind of just going by and going with the motions and praying that one day an opportunity would find me, because I'm like, I feel like I'm meant for so much more than this.
Mhm.
And sure enough, because I would work 2 jobs and go to school full time, I gained a lot of weight. My meals were horrible. And because it was my mom as a single parent, a lot of our meals were at home. And my mom even told me a story the other day. She's like, one time I drove up to McDonald's and I had to tell you guys, like, oh, I left my wallet at home because I didn't have enough money.
Wow.
And I was just kind of like, I mean, back then, didn't even notice it. But when I was 18 and I had my own money, I would go to McDonald's all the time. I would eat out very late at night. Um, and that was my lifestyle. So I gained 50 pounds in those 2 years. And that's when Herbalife found me.
Wow.
Well, really, I was quite searching for something. And I'll never forget that my mom offended me when I was going to a wedding wearing a dress. And she's like, you're going to go out in that? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, have you looked in the mirror? Oh,
Oh my
my gosh,
gosh.
even more offended. Thanks to my mom, I was searching. And that's when Herbalife found me. And that's when I said, I really need to do something. And I fell in love with the simplicity of our meal plans, and I loved it because I had a very busy schedule.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, when I lost my 35 pounds, people are like, oh, you must work out all the time. And I'm like, I don't have time to work out all the time. I have 2 jobs and I'm a full-time college student. I was like, I go 3 times a week if I can, where I
Mhm.
met my coach.
And
That's
your coach, your coach that you fell in love with.
that I fell in love with. He's my husband today.
Wow, what a blessing. I mean,
Yes.
I have to put in a disclaimer
Yes.
here. Falling in love with your coach is not typical.
But possible.
Very
Yes.
unique experience there, Brie. But
Yeah.
that's how you started this journey,
Yeah,
right?
that is how I was found. But in that process, I when I did meet my husband now,
Mhm.
I remember like anybody that would see me knew that I was in love with and they'd be like, "How cute!" But there was an age gap difference, and I always told people because of what my mom had gone through, I didn't believe in love. I was like, I never in my mind pictured myself like, and I would picture myself with like babies, but I wouldn't picture myself with a husband until I met my husband, and he was definitely the one for me. And so I tell people coming into this company has done so much more than just, oh, she had a great result, but has helped me mentally. And, I just want to say, watching your marriage has been such an example for me to say,
Mhm.
wow, that's amazing. Like, there is good men out there. Claps for
Amen.
Diego.
Claps for Diego. He's in the background. It's interesting because it's the circumstances that we're living,
Yeah,
right? I personally come from a broken household, right? My parents
yeah,
got divorced late, actually, when I was about 21 years old. They separated. But when you're living through those circumstances and you see, you were able to see not only
hmm,
emotional abuse, so many different things in your house, you end up thinking like,
yeah.
what do I want a man for,
Exactly.
right?
That's exactly where my mindset was.
Mhm.
And so it was just funny. I was besides being attracted to him, I mean, once we got into this, it was so much fun. But even though he was my coach, he was fairly new into the company, and I was making little sales, and I was like, I heard this is a business, but how? And
Mhm.
he's like, "Well, I don't really know. Let's go get trained together." And that was in October, and then January
Mhm.
Team Beauty was launched, and it was the best life-changing thing for me because it was everything that I was looking for. And so as you presented that opportunity, I tell people the income was like right up my avenue of what I was looking for. I was like, "Oh, finally I can see the MTV Cribs coming back." Cuz I had lost it. But more than that, I think the very first time we sat down and we covered what Team Beauty was about, you said the word empowerment.
Mhm.
You said, we want to empower women. You shared a little bit about your story. Go back to episode 1 if you
Mhm.
haven't heard it. And that's when I thought back to, the shelter that I was in. And I thought about my mom, and I thought about this would have been so amazing if she had something like this, if she had support, if she would have maybe taken an hour out of her day to come and work on herself. That might have been the lowest point that I saw her in, and that's what I would think about. So immediately when we talked about Teen Beauty, I wanted to impact so many women because I know so many women out there that are going through life, and I was like, this is so important.
Yes, and that was 8 years ago. And it's interesting that you say, that when you saw the opportunity, you thought about your mom, right?
Yes.
Because I think immediately you connected you being 12 years old, you being in the shelter, you going through
Yeah.
all of that, and how this project could have served her. And, empowerment, Brie. Let's get real, right?
Yeah.
Empowerment. I feel right that especially in today's world, 8 years later, I mean, there's definitely many empowerment groups,
Yes.
right? There's many empowerment quotes,
Right.
pages, a lot of things. This word gets thrown around
Yes.
a lot. Um, where maybe sometimes, you and I were talking, people could not even take it as serious,
Mhm.
or take it in like this is actually something that I need or that
Yeah.
can serve me to grow for my personal circumstance. So the word empowerment, right? At 20 years old, when we met, right? 21,
Yeah.
when we met, the word empowerment, what was it for you? Did you understand it? Did you know about it? What did empowerment mean for you?
So when you first said empowerment, I kind of thought about, like I said, my mom being at her lowest point. And the way that I took empowerment for myself was I was in a very low state of mind mentally of what I saw the world. Like I didn't trust men. Um, I was just very shut off, not just with men, but trust in general with even women.
Mm.
I tell people, I don't know about maybe today, but back then I was like social media, and it's still cruel. It's
Mhm.
such a cruel world to see. And when you said empowerment and for women to come together to uplift each other, I was like, I need that. And I want, more women to be able to have that. But back on the topic, I think sometimes when you hear the word empowerment for other women, I've had sometimes women come in and they're like, I don't want to do the circle thing. Or like, I don't want to look in the mirror, right? And get affirm. That's so silly. That's, you know, and so I think, to people that might think that, maybe you think it's silly because you don't want to face the reality, right? Sometimes
Of
we,
pain.
yeah, of pain, of emotion, of, uh, I got asked on my Instagram the other day, they said, do you have trust issues? And I said, I used to, but I've worked through my childhood trauma to where now it's different. And I don't feel the way that I felt at 21, right? Even
Mhm.
to walk into, so for like anybody that's listening, when you come maybe into our group of women empowerment, I used to go to the gym and be like, oh, why is she looking at me? Maybe I was wearing cute pants.
Yeah.
But my immediate thing was like, why is she looking at me? I'm going to go to the dark room where nobody can see me. And the reality is that that's just a poor, like, state of mind that
Mhm.
I feel. So when you said empowerment, I was just like, I need to be uplifted and I need to empower my mindset to be better for myself,
Mhm.
is what I took out of it at the time and continue to.
Love it, Brie. And you're so on point with, being able to understand, right, the situations that we might be in, the circumstances, and what that personal life change looks like when you want to take a step forward into your power and be like, I want to change. I
Yes.
want to make a difference, right? I want to eventually have my MTV crib, right? I want to change my life. I want to lose weight. I want to have a better relationship. There's all of these different avenues in life, in this success circle, especially as women today, right?
Mhm.
I truly believe that women are extremely powerful,
Yes.
and so many times we don't even scratch the surface of our true potential,
Mhm.
because we get fogged up with
Yes.
all of this life stuff, right? And
Yes.
a lot of the times it's easier for us to step back or
Mhm.
walk away from the help, walk away from your support, right? Walk away from, certain people and be by yourself, hide under the covers and wish that one
Yeah.
day life is going to change,
Yeah.
but it doesn't happen. And so, inside of Team Beauty, not only where we've been able to focus on nutrition and fitness,
Right.
but this thing, empowerment, is the main area where I've seen you obviously evolve and grow and bloom right into the woman that you are today, of not falling in a cycle, right,
Right.
of weakness,
Yeah.
per se, if that's the word that we can use.
Mhm.
Every single time, right, especially with social media, right,
Yeah.
we have Instagram, we have Facebook, there's reels, like so much growth that
Mhm.
there is, like, quotes and positivity and
Right.
phrases and
Yeah.
reels, right, and voice clips. But how many of those things, when we share it, do we actually say, like, shoot, let me get up and
And
start doing
yeah,
something about it?
and implement it. Yeah. And I think that's maybe what's most important, going back to, the quotes. I used to be that girl
Mm.
right before I found this, that, and so for our viewers that are listening, I really want you to think, when you share a quote, sometimes I read them and I'm like, that's meant for somebody else. Like you share something like, oh, I bet Jerry's gonna see this, right?
Uh,
And it's something kind of like shady, like between friends sometimes, which is the crazy part. Is that you're mad at your friend, so you're gonna find this empowerment quote,
mhm.
and it's kind of like you're like, I hope she read it, right? But so
And takes it for herself.
exactly. Versus, we should really be taking that upon ourselves. And to that I would say, in my growth and empowerment, I always tell people, as human beings we're selfish. But when we work with so many people and we're in group, I'm like, sometimes we have to see the bigger picture, because it's very easy, and I find it a lot, me and I think, and we never really take
Mhm,
anybody into consideration of what you might be going through as a
mhm,
person. And so I think that when it comes to the word empowerment, it should be something like you said that you need to take upon yourself. And which now, I want to touch the subject of, I had a baby about a year ago,
mhm,
and my beautiful baby girl. And I was so blessed that afterwards, my postpartum journey, that my Team Beauty sisters and my community checked in on me. I
mhm.
thought it was so beautiful that well, you were there like the first day.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm on my way. Are you home? But that daily I would get checked on, and, they would ask me, like, how are you doing? And I'd be like, oh, I'm great. And they're like, no, how are you doing? And inside of, my 8 years inside of Team Beauty, I have found so many moms that are like, well, I went through postpartum depression. And most of the time that I hear that, which could be different things, but most of the time it's because they were alone, and it's just you and the baby, and you feel alone, and maybe your husband has to go work, or you're the one breastfeeding. So you're up at night, and it's a hard journey, but there you don't have any type of community. And so most of the times that I hear my moms are like, I just felt so alone. And I think about, I didn't feel alone. I tell people I'm so blessed, but I also embraced it. I also prepared myself with time to say I'm not alone, and I can go into our group chat and see these women empowering themselves, and I can participate. I think that's important. That
Well, you said two key things, right?
Yeah.
Like that you need to go in,
Yeah.
like go in the group chat,
Yeah.
right? That's the first thing. And then the second one is that you can participate.
Yes.
So, as you're talking about this, right? I'm someone who did go through
Mhm.
postpartum depression. Obviously, I didn't have Teen Beauty
Yet.
yet. When I had my first child, I didn't have a clue, right? We go through this illusion, especially as moms, for all our new moms listening out there. We have this illusion of like, oh, I'm pregnant, and
Yeah.
like I'm in love, and it's beautiful, and my dreams are coming true,
Yeah.
right? Prince Charming is right next to me, and and we're like nesting, and it's gonna be such a beautiful thing. And then baby's born, and like really nobody comes. I mean, because my mom
Yeah.
wasn't there 24/7, right?
Yeah.
My mother-in-law wasn't there 24. It was like, where are all the people that were gonna help me like change diapers, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if any of my moms have felt that way, but it's
Yeah.
like that. And so you aren't really prepared, not only like having a baby, you aren't really prepared like when you get out of high school, when you get out of
Mhm.
college, when you go out into the world and do all of these things, you start like bumping your head, and you start
Yeah.
to see reality, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how you're saying like that you were prepared, because inside of Team Beauty, you
Yeah.
have a community,
Yes.
and you have a group chat,
Mhm.
and you have support. But it's important
Yeah.
not to neglect
Mhm.
this thing called the empowerment,
Yeah.
because you could be sitting right in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
You could be a member, and you can have and be a part of it. But the most important thing, what you just said, is number one, you have to come inside,
Yeah.
and number two, you have to participate.
Correct.
Because it doesn't mean that, I think, right? Like, let's get real, Brie. Life isn't, beautiful
Mm-mm.
24/7. We have the hiccups, we have the crying, we have the stress, you have the anxiety, but it's to another level of peace, right? Where
Yes.
And so that's what I want you to tell us. Like, as you had baby and you're like, I didn't go through postpartum depression because I had my sisterhood, I had my support, what was it really for all of our moms out there or anybody going through anxiety,
Yeah.
depression, all of these things that we cope with? What was it really that you had to tell yourself daily to not fall into that hole?
Yeah. And so I'll say this, just because I didn't like go through the postpartum depression does not mean that I did not have hard days, because I did. And one of those hard things for me, like postpartum, was my first week. And I was like, I'm going to breastfeed. And my milk wasn't coming in. And I was pumping, but I was making just enough to feed my baby. And then one night I was pumping. It was very late at night. I was exhausted and I spilled the milk, and I cried, and I grabbed the pump and I smashed it to the floor and I started screaming and crying. And my husband's like, "What happened? What's wrong?" And I'm crying and I'm like, "But like the only milk that she has, I spilled it." And he was like, "Well, can't you just put more?" And I was like, "No, I can't. That's all that I made, right? For her next feeding." And I was like, "I'm gonna have to go get formula." And
It's a horrible feeling.
yeah, and so I
Mhm.
remember that time it was just like, oh my gosh, and he didn't even know what to do. But I remember I had my moment, I had my meltdown, and I cried, and I wiped my tears away, and I was like, it's okay, I'm gonna feed her, and it's gonna be okay, right? And the reason that I was able to, have my moment and collect myself was because inside of my community, so many moms are like, it's okay. Your baby's gonna be okay, and you're gonna be okay. So when I plug into my community, I didn't feel alone.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, if I didn't have my community and I didn't know that this was normal, I probably still would have been a mess. I probably still would have been losing it. And so for me, what keeps me going daily is that we're all going to have rough days and bad days. And, my dad passed away 3 months ago, and it was a difficult time. But I also, my mom would say, the world keeps turning and we have to keep moving on, right? And you have to ask yourself, like, do you really want to be, sad all the time? Or do you really want to? And so to me, the way that I move forward is I show up, right? And that might look like coming to a pink day, and that might look like being active in the group chat or being on social media. That's what keeps me going. So I tell people, if you really want to get out of whatever it is that you're going through, it's hard. And, it's hard for everybody. I was actually having a conversation with one of my girls. Um, she's going through life herself, and she was telling me about all her problems, right? And I told her, I said, maybe you don't want to hear this, right? But I told her, your situation is not as bad as the next person. And I was like, and just because she went through something really horrible, I'm like, just because you went something through that was really bad doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt as much as me losing my dad. That might be the worst thing for me right now and your situation. So everybody experiences pain, and no one can sit here and be like, but mine's worse, Jerry, than yours,
True.
because it's not. It's not. Everyone goes through pain, through different situations, but I told her, what we can do is we can show up for ourselves. And, I'm like, you don't want to feel that ugliness and cry out, because she said, I'm tired of crying every day. And I said, okay, well then let's show up together, let's be accountability partners, so you don't have to stay there. And that's a mental choice. I don't have to stay there.
That's powerful, Brie, because so many women, people, okay, not only women,
Yeah.
but so many people don't know how to get out,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't have this, what you're
Yes.
talking about. And so if you're listening right now and you're thinking to yourself, like, oh my gosh, I'm living through this, or I've been living through this, or 2022 has passed me by and I've been sad and I've been this and I've been that. You just said it right now, it's a personal choice.
Yes.
And you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
when you do want to make that change, you have to make a personal decision. You have to draw the line, and
Mhm.
we all have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm really sore right now. Let me tell you. I started, it was about 6 weeks that, I was off, and I started again. And I was talking about how, we all want to change our life, and we want a big booty, small waist, look good, be fit, all these things. You want MTV
Yeah.
Cribs, you have. I applaud you if you're listening and you're the dreamer, you're the faithful, you're the hopeful, right? You're the ambitious woman
Yeah.
listening on the screen. And you know, then you start and you feel pain.
Yeah.
You feel uncomfortable. You start
Mhm.
to, encounter things that are going to get in your way. For me,
Yeah.
right now, it's soreness, right? It's that time of the month coming in, and you're like, do I really need to go work
Yeah.
out, right? And it's showing up is making that decision and saying, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I feel that many who have had success inside of the last 8 years,
Mhm.
whether it's success in their weight loss journey, in their transformation journey, in their personal development journey, in their business journey, the successful people that have been able to come out on top inside of their own life has been because they have shown up for themselves
Yes.
no matter what,
Definitely.
right? No matter what. And so, empowerment,
Yeah.
I always say, right, that girls always say, like, oh, those teen beauty girls like live in a pink bubble, right? And it's like, we're not angels, we're not
Yeah.
saints, right?
Mhm.
Empowerment doesn't mean that you're perfect.
Yeah.
I always like to say, like, we're not heaven, right? You're
Yeah.
not gonna find a bunch of angels, right?
No.
That everything is perfect. But we do decide to get up again
Yes.
and not give up on our personal journey. And the most important thing for you that is listening is, that you say something and that
Mhm.
you're not going to give up no matter what.
Yes.
Through PMS, right? Through the ups, through the downs, through everything in between, you get up once again and again.
Yes.
Even if you spill your milk,
Yeah.
right? You get up again and you say, like, look at your baby in the eye and say, I love you so much. I'm going to
Yeah.
be my best for you.
Yes.
And you keep on going until, right, you
Mhm.
reach that personal goal. So,
Yes.
what would you tell everybody listening today, as they encounter a new week here in these last 12 weeks before Christmas, they're looking to feel empowered, they're looking to improve their life, they're looking to feel better about themselves. How do they, get out of the hump? What does Brie tell herself, right,
So
every day?
this is so big for me. And even as you were talking, I was already thinking about this. I think, before the workout or whether it's before getting empowered, there's a little voice in your head that's saying, but we could just sit in the couch. But do I really want to drive in
But wait,
traffic?
check on Instagram before you
Yeah.
go. You go.
And so before, like that little voice in your head, you just need to tell it to shut up. Shut up.
It's like
No.
the little devil, right? It's
Yeah.
there telling you, like, you're fine. You don't need to do
Yeah.
it.
Or
You can
sometimes like
wait.
I just don't want to. Like
Mhm.
that has been for me. Like my husband will be like, do you want to work out? And I'm like, I just don't want to do it. Right. But let me just say, whether it's saying yes to the workout, whether it's choosing a healthier meal versus a bad meal, just do it. Don't give yourself that pep talk in your head of, well, I can do something else or I don't want it to. Just don't think about it and just go do it. Just tell yourself, do it. Just
Mhm.
go, right? Because when you do that, when you finish the workout, you feel amazing and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, that felt so great. And even when you're sore, you're like, I'm sore, and you know something's happening inside of your body. So I would say from here to, the end of the year, if you're looking to better yourself, then I would say just do it and don't fight with yourself in your own mind, cuz that definitely happens, right? I would say just get up and do it, whether that's coming to work out. And I guess maybe I'll leave with this. I was talking to one of the girls yesterday, and she was well, Patty, we went to Pink Day, and she was talking about this moment that she was going through with her mom, and that emotionally inside she hadn't talked about it with anybody. And she's like, Brie and I weren't close back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, hey, can I get in your car? And she was like about to cry. She's like, why does she want to get in my car? And I sat in her car and I'm like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, what do you mean? Nothing's wrong with. She's like, in my head, she's like, she doesn't even know me, right? And I'm like, no, 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 something's wrong with you. Like, what's wrong? And she started crying and she started explaining what was happening. She's telling this in our empowerment group. And as she's saying this to the girls, she said, sometimes you just need to talk about it. Maybe you don't want to, but I felt better after that. And one of the girls said, I have trauma from these past few years of what she's lost 80 pounds. She looks amazing. But she's like, when I look in the mirror, like, I'm so hard on myself. And I was like, okay, well, why are you hard on yourself? And she's like, well, I went through this relationship 12 years ago. And I told her, and I said, well, it took you 12 years of, this bad talking to yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. But I said, we can work on it. And I said, you need to talk about it. I'm like, and I know, she's like, no, I'm just going to ball. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to have a wine night with girls. And you need to talk about it because you can't move forward if we don't talk about it. So if you're going through something, just grab one of your girlfriends, grab one of the girls. I mean, we're more than happy to sit there with you, and maybe you just need to let it out.
Release,
Yes,
release.
release. Yes.
Well, Brie, I'm just gonna wrap it up by saying that, whoever that counselor was that said that you weren't gonna make it, okay? How old are you right now?
I'm 28.
28. Bree started with us 8 years ago, and so
Yeah.
um you have made something out of yourself, right?
Yes.
You beat the odds according to the numbers. And anybody that's listening, I mean, with your story, and there's so much to tell, right? But just in this short period of time, from a 20-year-old, right, who had already been through 8 jobs, going through so much, right? And embracing this opportunity and taking it in, you've definitely bloomed into a beautiful woman who has transformed herself, and today you are in that, right? You're inside
Yes.
of making your dreams come true. You're an amazing mother, an amazing wife, have an amazing relationship with your husband, right? And, I'm beyond proud of you. And I
Thank
know that your
you.
story is definitely going to empower other women to get up one more time, to release, right?
Yes.
To start showing up for themselves
Yes.
and, to start living a healthier and happier version of themselves.
Of course. Don't let anybody tell you that you're a statistic because you're not.
I mean, can we just drop the mic there,
Yeah,
right?
drop mic.
Thank you so much, Bree. That was episode 3, and we are beyond excited for the next one. Everybody, if you found value inside of our podcast this week, please reshare, repost on your social media, send it out to somebody that was in the same position as Bryanna, and let's be that empowerment, right? Let's be that support. Let's be that helping hand. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.